Good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you're watching. Books in the World, a production of the Cape Cod Writers Center. Today we're going to have some fun. We have a mystery thriller, two mystery thrillers written by Joyce, Keller, Walsh. Hi, Joyce.
Hi, thank you for having me, Madeline.
Oh, you're welcome. And Joyce has the most amazing necklace on, which is a total giveaway.
Meant to be.
Meant to be, about her books, which are about the serpents and serpent lore and mythology in Mexican culture. I guess that's one way to summarize it. But Joyce has written in genres from A to Z and subjects from A to Z and genres, playwright, you're a nonfiction writer.
Easily bored.
Easily bored. Well, I was going to say energetic. So we're going to get into the books in a little bit. They're set in Cape Cod in Mexico, and there's a lot to talk about. I personally am very interested in the cultural parts of it. Somebody else might be more interested in the Cape Cod local scenes and the murder mystery parts, but we'll see. I'd say, to summarize, these books are a really good read. They're fun to read, they're intriguing. One of the reviewers actually says, "Feathered Serpents is one of the best books I read. Joyce Keller Walsh's writing is superb," always good to hear. "Her scene settings are vivid, including some local flavor in Cape Cod and Boston. And her characters are strong and quite real. If you love a good murder mystery, you'll adore this book. As an added bonus, you'll receive a sprinkling of road science that will have you questioning the risk of non-regulated bioengineering. Feathered Serpents had me thoroughly entertained until late into the night. I highly recommend this book."
It was so nice of him, and I hadn't read that until you showed it to me a few minutes ago.
Well, we're going to talk about writing as well as these plots, and you did say you don't like to read reviews, so there's one point of view about writing and being an author and how sensitive you might feel at times. You want to comment about that?
Well, as I was telling you, my first foray into playwriting decades ago was received very well in Boston, and it was reviewed in the major newspapers, other than the Boston Globe. When the second play came along, and the commentary was so positive in the first one. The second one, everyone liked it except the then reviewer for the Boston Globe, who was Kevin Kelly, whom I always refer to the evil little gnome. He was just vicious. and as a result, I actually stopped writing for 5 years because I was that struck by it and that devastated by it. I was traumatized. And I went off and I did other things, but I couldn't until I took, for some reason I needed a course to complete my master's that was not in my field, and I took a course in playwriting, and it hit me what had happened. I didn't even consciously realize that that's what had stopped me from writing. And then I vowed I was not going to read reviews again, and I was certainly not going to be deterred by them.
So your advice for authors is not to read them, or?
Depends on how much self-esteem you have and how sensitive you are. I find that commentary one-on-one gives me the most good advice for writing than reading a review, because anonymously people can say anything and do. And so I tend not to take it to heart. And I would advise anybody, really, just forge your own path. You know, take the advice from people that you have, that you credit for being smart and helpful.
Well, as we're on this topic, I know you are co-founder of Authors Without Borders, which is a New Bedford group of writers. Do you have writers groups? Do you sponsor get-together?
No, what we do, we were all published writers when we came together. What we couldn't do was market our books. And we began to support each other in how to promote your book once you've written it, because writing was the fun part. And once it was written, once it was published, we all kind of, well, what do we do now? And what we did then is not necessarily what we're doing now. Back then, we had craft fairs to go to and workshops that we put on, and that was a way. now we've been very much invested in helping other writers go through that process. In fact, we just had a meet and greet in the the Thayer Library in Easton.
Yes.
I guess
Braintree.
2 weeks ago. Braintree, excuse me, Braintree. I'm thinking
we
of
were
your
talking
library.
about
Yes,
Easton,
right.
my library, right.
And our goal was to help other new writers sort of go through this obstacle path and how to promote their books once they've got it finished. What do they do with it? And that actually includes publishing as well as promoting.
Yeah. Well, you've written 8 books, and the topics range from health to murder to. Tell us a little bit more about what you've been doing before you got to the Feathered Serpents.
Well, in terms of writing, I was not a mystery reader, but I always thought of Hamlet as being a mystery play. And I thought, well, what isn't a mystery in life, really? And so most of the books that I write, which are mysteries, are really about not whodunits. They're more about character and setting and inner turmoil and plot than they are exactly who killed whom and how. Well, maybe the how.
The how.
Right.
Wait till we start talking about this snake.
Right. But they're not what they would call police procedurals. They're not cozies. I feel like I'm writing a straight novel that happens to be a mystery.
Yeah. Well, you have a very impressive educational background that includes liberal arts as well as the sciences and psychology, is it?
My master's degree is in psychology, yes.
These books are, as you say on the back, about the realm of transgenic research and mysticism. So I have to as we get into this, how did you get into these subjects? Can you tell us, maybe you want to set the scene a little bit about the books and this transgenic research and mysticism?
Yes, well, actually I don't want to give away why the anaconda is the way that it is.
Oh, yes, don't give away.
I won't give that.
No,
But I
no
will
spoilers.
about transgenic research, and I'm not talking about Jurassic Park. At Harvard Medical School right now, they're trying to recreate a woolly mammoth. And this is ongoing research. It's not rogue science because they're not creating a new species at this point. What they're trying to do is take elephant genes, and there are all kinds of splicing that goes on, take elephant genes and combine them with genes that will make a hairy skin outcome, will elongate the tusks, etc. They have some DNA that they have, and that is Jurassic Park-like, culled from the Arctic, where they have found bodies frozen still in time of woolly mammoths. And that whole idea of, well, what's the next step? If they're trying to create that kind of thing or recreate, what about a designer species? As it happens, and that led me into a very interesting path of genetics. And there's a wonderful book right now by Carl Zimmer called She Had Her Mother's Laugh, which, or I should say, She Has Her Mother's Laugh, which gives you a history of heredity and the genetic research from Mendel to the current genome splicing. And it's fascinating. And that's, I don't know how, maybe no author can tell you exactly how these things, this mosaic comes together in your mind.
Yeah.
But it's a little bit here and a little bit there, and it builds.
So give us a little plot overview, so you and I know what we're talking about, because we're really into this at this point.
The essential fact is this detective who came from Tucson in a very large police department to Cape Cod, and it's not like going from California to Maine in that series. He comes to Cape Cod because he's a single parent, his wife has died, and his daughter is an artist, and she's been admitted to a very prestigious art academy. And so he is being a good father, and he loves his daughter, and she loves him. This is not an angry relationship, this is a very loving relationship. He says he will sacrifice the 4 years that it takes her to go through this academy by being on Cape Cod, which he does not like. He's not comfortable there. He wants the desert, he wants the mountains, he wants the hot colors. And here what he's getting is gray in the winter, and that's where he is primarily. He's coming in for the fall term, and it's into the winter, and everything is bleak, and he is just he realizes people call him a wash ashore,
Yeah.
which is something the Cape Codders would know as wash ashore.
We all are.
Right.
Many of us
That's
are
right,
anyway.
exactly. But he's uncomfortable with it at this point, and he's bored because he's in this little two-person office, and nothing happens on the Cape in winter, or so he thinks. And then he gets a call. Well, actually, the call hangs up, and he's bemused by it, but then his deputy arrives and says, oh, there's this expatriate on the hill, this famous opera singer, who's been eaten by her pet snake. Mm-hmm. And that starts this unraveling of what happened and then where it goes from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, as a reader, when you hear that someone's been eaten by a snake, you're like, whoa, what is this all about?
Well, I'll tell you, I have a 23 or 24 foot anaconda skin in my living room, rolled up in a bag, of a snake that tried to eat my husband, who people may know. His name is John Walsh. He is well known for animal rescue projects. His career has been that. On his first project, which is 1964-1965, Operation Guamba, he was in Suriname, which was formerly Dutch Guiana. Alcoa had dammed a river in order to produce a lake. It has to do with the production of aluminum. And they flooded many, many acres of jungle floor. And the government of Suriname was removing the tribal people who were there, Sarmakan, and bringing them to these transmigration villages. And that's another story. They were very unhappy there. But he was seconded from the MSPCA to the International Society for Protection of Animals to rescue the animals, rescue and relocate. And it is still to date the largest jungle animal rescue in history, other than Noah, nearly 10,000 animals. And one night, and he was there for about a year and a half, almost 2 years. His habit would be at the end of the night to take this little aluminum boat and go up to the dam and reconnoiter, do some reconnaissance for the following day. And it was late in the afternoon, and the motor quit, and the boat stalled, and even though he could fix motors, he couldn't fix that one. And so he just figured, well, what am I going to do? I'll go to sleep in the boat. They'll find me in the morning. My men will come looking for me. But as he was there, the anaconda, which was very hungry because all of the food sources were being removed, slipped down into the boat and started coiling around him and literally tried to kill him and eat him. He doesn't really know how he killed the anaconda. Mm-hmm. It must have been a hell of a battle. This is a very, just think, 20 to 25 feet long. He managed to kill it, and they managed to find him. At that time, Gorgas Memorial Institute I believe it was Gorgas Memorial, was offering a reward for anyone who reported the longest anaconda in the world. And because his project was run simply on donations, because it's a charity, and they were always scrambling for money and sometimes went without for long periods of time, they had hoped that maybe they could collect the reward. So they did take the skin of the animal and brought it to the Gorgas. But they had to decapitate it. And in decapitating it, it didn't make the cut. I didn't say that cut. It wasn't long enough. So they didn't get the money. P.S. I have the skin. Every once in a while, we'll unroll it. And that's...
Is that where you kind of got interested in this?
Yes.
All right. Now,
Yes.
you also tie it to the Mesoamerican culture. And I'm going to leave it up to you to say some of these wonderful names of the snakes that are part of the mythology.
Yes. Well, the Quetzalcoatl is probably fairly well known if anybody is interested in Mesoamerican culture, especially ancient, the Toltecs in particular. And once I had established that the detective, father detective, chief, was of Mexican ancestry, it just fell into place. Okay. I didn't even have to stretch for it. It just came together. I've been to Mexico. I did not get to Tula, which is where the pyramids are located for the Toltec culture, but somehow those things swirl around in your mind, and you don't know how they come together.
Yeah. Well, back to the Cape, you have the way you have put this together with the chief who has the Mexican background and the deputy who has the Pequot background is really very entertaining and kind of educational to read. And then juxtaposed, you have these celebrities and Interpol people and who is the agent and all of the celebrities that are flocking around the opera singer. So you get the insight into what's behind all those mansions, closed doors that the average person wonders about but doesn't see on the Cape.
That I actually transposed that from Costa Rica. That's what I mean.
I'm sure those people are somewhere on the Cape as well.
Yes, I'm sure there were. There was an expatriate community.
Yeah.
Now there's a big retirement community, but when I was there, it was an expat community. And there were these mansions up on the hill. And again, it sinks in and it percolates its way through. And there was a man who owned one of the fincas whose name was David, and that's how she came to be Davida.
Davida Sharon.
Yes.
Sharone, I don't know.
And he was a very interesting Yale-educated recluse. And these things
they come together.
They do somehow. They do.
Well, she announces early in the story, before she gets murdered, that she has written her memoirs, and that starts the story, the ball rolling. And when they eventually find the memoirs, they are written in Hebrew, which is another interesting little cultural twist.
Well, as I look around me, I see various shades of skin color. I see various cultures. I don't think that. I think people who write in one dimension are doing a disservice to our culture. And so as I get older, perhaps, I see in a variety of shades in everything. And so I more and more try to include that in my writing.
You also include some of the cultural, negative cultural things that are going on the Cape when you get back to Roger and his brother and some of the drugs things.
Not just the Cape, unfortunately.
Not just the Cape.
No.
The racism
the past racism that he refers to was, again, not exclusive to the In at all. And of course, where I live in proximity to New Bedford, I live in not in New Bedford proper, but in proximity to it, and that's where our show is televised. There are a lot of opioid deaths, a lot of overdoses, and it just seems very endemic right now. And so not to include that would have been to look away.
Part of life, yeah. Well, these are mysteries, and most of the stories are trying to figure out who done it. And everyone probably has a motive or can be a suspect. You are the craftsperson writing the story. So I want to ask you two questions. One is, first of all, describe the character Tezka a bit, because she's kind of key to the intrigue. And the other is, how do you decide how to keep us guessing? How do you craft all that so that everyone can be...
Let me do the second one first.
Okay.
It doesn't happen on a first draft or a second draft or a third draft. I'm an inveterate reviser. And in fact, when I talk to other writers, new writers, the advice that I always give them, I give them two pieces of advice. One is revise, revise, revise. No matter how well you think you're doing or how good you think it is, it can probably stand another go around. I found a hard time letting go of it, frankly. And the other is perseverance, because that is the key. But so it didn't happen on the first few drafts. And as I built those building blocks, I started layering in. I call it the coloratura. Well, you're making it more, you're giving it more depth, more everything on the subsequent drafts. Sometimes I do an outline, and then I discard that and I do another outline. I mean, I just go over and over and over it again. And then, like in speaking with you earlier, I'll come to a new idea and I want to do it again. As for Tezka, I would like the reader not to know exactly what she is. Is she bisexual? We don't know. Is her name Tezka? We don't know. Is she a shaman? We don't know. Is she a con artist? Hopefully the reader makes up his or her own mind on that. Is she influential? That for sure. She reveals things in a way that sometimes seems mystical. And then, yet when you have a pragmatist, such as Sebastian Calderon, who is the detective, who looks for things that he can see, hear, smell, taste, touch, this is beyond his ken, and he doesn't feel comfortable dealing with someone who delves into a different realm of spirit or mysticism or mythology. And yet he keeps getting caught short. And how did this happen? How did she know that? And then he rationalizes to himself maybe how she knew it or how it happened. But he's never quite certain, and the reader should never be quite certain.
Yeah. I think there's an element in your books where even finishing them, you're not quite certain. Basically, is this serpent technology that's going on, is it being done for an international profiteering situation, or is it being done for these ceremonies that are going on in Mexico that you very vividly describe? So you managed to keep those balls in the air pretty well. So, snakes and profit and science and
all very real, all too real in a way. I mean, we're very comfortable with GMOs, genetically modified organisms and plants and things of that to make, and fruits and vegetables to extend their lives. But we've always had breeding, which is different from genetic engineering in a way. It isn't. It's usually you can cross two dogs to get a third, a cockapoo being a poodle and a cockapoo. But you don't usually cross a dog with a giraffe. That would be different. And that's what this is more like. It's crossing species. And that, I'm always fearful that what we can think of, we wind up doing. For good or ill.
That's what these books bring out, and it's a wonderful subject. I mean, just in case the reader isn't quite sure what we're talking about, I'll just give one example, and I don't think I'm giving anything away, is that they found that the pregnant snake had a snake of a different color that was gestating. I was like, oh, this is a total effort to make, in that case, a red-skinned snake from a whatever white one, I guess.
In actuality, I say this hasn't been done, but it has. A turtle has been crossed with a snake, and I think I describe it in the book. It was found in a temple. It died, but there has been an attempt, and that means there will be more attempts.
Well, I don't know where all this will be going, but
I just hope the reader loves the characters enough to keep on reading.
I think so. And we were talking earlier about your playwriting, and that you have now thought about merging these, or you have already. What is your future for these stories?
Well, I have done a film script of them. It's not my first film script, and as I explained to you earlier, I've had film scripts optioned before that have fallen through for one reason or another. So I never really hope for anything now. I just put it out there, and what happens will happen. I have had a producer want the full script just last week, requested it. Whether that will lead to anything or not, I don't know. It's something that I have no control over. There's a Dalai Lama phrase that I love. If you can do something about it, don't worry. In other words, do something. If you can't do anything about it, don't worry, because you can't do anything about it.
There you go.
So
that's useful.
Right. So I just put it out there, and whatever will happen, will happen. I'm of an age now where I can take that kind of an attitude. When I was younger, of course, I was very invested in the outcome, and I don't know whether one gets a little jaded or a little thicker hide, but you begin to realize you can't control a whole lot of things.
You're doing what you enjoy doing.
Exactly. That's the part. That is yes, the writing is the most enjoyable part. The rest of it, well, it happens or it doesn't.
Yeah. So what are you working on?
I'm actually working on two things. I'm working on the fourth book of the Pitsley County Chronicles, of which there's Juckets, Swamp Yankees, and Bogmen.
What are those about?
And those are that very much in local they're mysteries, southeastern Massachusetts. And it's about a particular community that really is disappearing now, of so almost like an Appalachian type community that exists in Freetown, Lakeville, Berkeley area. That it really pretty much has gone by, but I remember it when it was thriving, and so I wanted to kind of picture that, but I put it in the form of a mystery. But this fourth book, again, is going to be different because it's one character's viewpoint pretty much. He's older, he lives in the woods, and he's a little bit more accepting of things in nature that he knows nothing about. I guess, which is where I am at the moment. So I'm working on that. And I'm also working on a nonfiction history of, there are 3 brothers who served in World War I, all of whom wrote many books. One of them lived in Lakeville, and one was knighted, and one was a theatrical agent and producer. And so that's going to be my rest of the life project, I think.
And this is actual
yeah.
nonfiction.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
okay.
this is true.
Okay, well, sounds worthy, and the idea of describing the folks who live in that area and lived there is a very interesting idea, because there are all these different pockets of our regionalism that maybe we don't know a lot about.
It's very much, there's a book by J.D. Vance called Hillbilly Elegy. Do you know it?
I was going to bring that up.
Yes,
I just
it's that
read
kind
it.
of a community
Yes.
that they went to Ohio, but it's that kind of a community that's been in our area. And it's a level of lack of education and poverty that kind of stems from that, but that's changing, and so that is changing.
Well, we're going to look forward to that, and I am going to just have to tell you we're out of time, and it's been delightful getting to know you
Thank
a bit.
you, and thank you so much, Madeline. You've been a wonderful host.
Range of ideas that we've talked about, and thank everyone for listening, and I hope to see you many times. So tune in to Books in the World, and thank you for coming, Joyce.
Oh, thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure.
Mine too.
Yeah.
So that will be my master work. Totally different, again, from anything else that I've done. So.